such a happy occasion out of so many hundreds and thousands of occasions we're fortunate to be part of, especially to come to the abode of His Grace Bali Mardhan Prabhu, Her Grace Ananda Vrindavan, Brajaras Bhavana, and Abhay. We were surprised to find civilization over here. Just when I was a kid, it was all orchards. And now Lord Chaitanya has some arrangement for Krishna consciousness to spread here. It's all His will that He's moving us in various parts of the world. In fact, He's moving all living entities. Ishvara sarvabhutanam hriday sharajana tishtati brahmayan sarvabhutani yantra rudrani maya. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita that He's within everyone's heart and He's directing their wanderings. And Lord Chaitanya said, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasade Pai Bhakti Lata Bij. Again, that idea of wandering in the material world said is then brought to purpose when somebody comes in contact with a spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. So this occasion has become part of the culture here at ISKCON Silicon Valley because of Bali Mardhan and Ananda Vrindavan and families' deep devotion to Lord Jagannātha. We can remember for years and years ago coming to your home on this occasion and feeling connected with Jagannath Puri. And it's coming from your deep devotion to Jagannath Puri, to Lord Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. So thank you very much for being a steady, a constant in the community for so many decades and for living in a temple-like home. And then, of course, for bringing forth to the world Brajaras Bhavana and Abhay, who have become luminaries and will carry on the tradition as well. As we were driving in here, I was thinking how the whole Bay Area is ripe for Krishna consciousness. And then I was thinking if it's Lord Chaitanya's will, it can hardly be stopped. And all we have to do is cooperate. So the people of the world are suffering because they're deprived of information of the spiritual world. One of the ways that Rath Yatra is so glorious is that it's one of those events that cannot be denied. The grandeur of the festival. When one goes to Jagannath Puri, we find the grand road that is wide enough, specially made just so that Lord Jagannath, Baladev and Subhadra can ride gloriously on their chariots all the way to Gunicha. And that millions of people come for that festival in Jagannath Puri. When one goes early, you'll notice also that they build the cart every year. The artisans there out in the open are building and painting and making the cart, which is also reminiscent of how Prabhupada brought it to America, because where I grew up in Krishna consciousness in San Francisco, well, that's a funny way to say it. I joined in San Francisco, I grew up in the Bay Area, and then, of course, Rath Yatra was already part of the culture, and I, in fact, joined the day after Rath Yatra, for which some of the devotees admonished me and said, "What are you doing? You missed it by a day." But I did get to help put some of the big wheels into the garage and see the chariot, and in subsequent years, Jayananda and others would be in a parking lot somewhere nearby rebuilding the carts. Of course, in Jagannath Puri, the last time I saw it, they build them from scratch every year, and it's an event that changes the whole city. In fact, this whole city exists just for the Rath Yatra to go on. The military comes and they change all the traffic. They have reversible lanes and they'll put up special barricades and signs so that the traffic can conform to the festival and it can all go on for the pleasure of Lord Jagannātha. Everything in Jagannath Puri is centered around pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Purushottam. And therefore, it's no ordinary place, and according to the Shastra, we read in Nectar Devotion, for instance, that for those who have eyes, they see that the residents there are four-armed Vaikuntha forms. Anyone who goes there, in fact, will be liberated. So Jagannath Puri and Rath Yatra is an integral part of Krishna consciousness in our Gaudiya Sampradaya. We're very fortunate because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he comes to the world, as we just sang, Anarpita Charim Chirat Karuna Yavatirna Kalau. In Kali Yuga, the Lord, out of a sense of compassion for the world, thinks, for a long time I've not given the knowledge of my very intimate pastimes in the spiritual world. We know from the Brahma Samhita, Goloka Namni Nijadamni Chaleta Tasya Devi Mahesha Haridama Suteshu Teshu Te Te Prabhava Nijaya Vihi Tascha Yena Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. You can't all see it from here, but I'm looking at a little map. If you go to a mall and it says you are here, I'm looking at the bigger map that shows how there's the lowest of all is Devi Dham, and I can even see Devi from here. And above that is Mahesh Dham, the abode of Shiva. And above that, of course, is Haridham, or the Vaikuntha realm, but in the topmost planet there's Goloka Vrindavan. That's explained also and discussed in the beginning of the Brahma Samhita, Sahasrapatra Kamalam Gokulakam Mahatpadam. That Mahatpadam there is in the shape of a lotus flower. And the supreme moiety is there in the form of Sri Sri Radha Krishna. So Krishna, feeling compassionate for the world, thinks that although some people have an understanding of the grandeur of the spiritual world and of the relationship that people have to the Lord with reverence, however, nobody has heard. Anarpita Charim Chirat can mean not for a long time, or can mean also people have never heard of this before. So he has the impetus to give the knowledge of this highest realm of the spiritual world. And this is one of his purposes in coming as the yuga changes and Kali Yuga is beginning, just after Dwapara Yuga, and Krishna's left. And then when Kali Yuga begins, the Chana avatar, mentioned in where? Prahlad Maharaj prayers. Anybody know the prayer? Is it Itam Nitirya Grishijeva Jashavatara Lokan Vibhavasi Hamsi Jagat Pratipam Dharmam Mahapurusha Pasyugana Vritam Chanakalo Yadababas Triyugota Satvam. Got one anyway. I can't win a sticker yet. Need 9 more for that. So he comes, does the Lord, in this covered form. What's he covered? He's, of course, the original color of Krishna, which is blackish, like a rain cloud. As my wife reminded me this morning, this afternoon, as we were walking out there, I said, Krishna's blue, and she goes, he's blackish blue. It's the kind of arguments couples have after many, many decades together. And then he's akrishnam, or is said to be not blackish, which our acharyas say means actually his effulgence, and we hear that in the Mangalacharana to the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. He's assumed the heart and halo of Srimati Radharani. Therefore, although he's Krishna, he's in a blackish complexion. And, he's in a golden complexion. And so, in the Kali Yuga, his intention is to reveal the path of unceremonious love that's there in the spiritual world. It's also given shape and definition in the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, which describes the various stages of awakening of Shraddha and the ways in which devotees who are on the path of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu come from practicing devotional service by the rule of Shastra and the Guru, and then gradually they develop a sense of spontaneous love for Krishna, which we know from the Upadeshamrita summarized there. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he appears and performs his pastimes in Navadvip as the great hero of Navadvip, he's the cynosure of everyone's eyes because he's very beautiful, so beautiful that people can't take their eyes off him. But not only that, he's smart, really smart. So smart that everyone's either afraid to talk to him because in the very beginning he's also full of himself with his learning, and he'll argue with everyone and then defeat them and tie them in philosophical knots. But then he also is known for having defeated the Digvijay Pandit, and he becomes famous in his hometown. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left home, as described by Karabhajana Muni, Tektvasa dusya jasa repshicha Raja Lakshmin dharmishta arya vachasa yadagar aranyam mayam ragam dayita yitsipam anvadavad vande mahapurusha te charanaravindam. He gives up his heroism and the goddess of fortune, whom he's married to in Navadvip. He goes off to take sannyas, wife, to chase after his beloved Lord, his Ishtadev Shamasundar, but also to save the conditioned souls. Mayam Ragam Dayate Ipsitam Anvadavad. And he uses an excuse, which Prabhupada mentions also in the purport. He writes about how this is transcendental fraud one may perpetrate, looking for any opportunity to completely surrender. Vidura found it when people mistreated him in his own home and he just left. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got chastised by a Brahmin who said, "You'll never enjoy material happiness." And he took that as an excuse to leave, Arya Vachasa. So when he takes sannyas and he makes an arrangement with his mother, Sachi Devi, the mother of the universe, and he comes back to Advaitacharya's house after wandering in the Radha Desh and ecstasy. Lord Nityananda tricks him. His pastimes are very funny in that way. Nityananda Prabhu told cowherd boys nearby, if he asks you which way is Vrindavan, tell him that way. It was actually the other way. And he leads him, does Nityananda Prabhu, leads Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's now a sannyasi in his ecstasy, down to the house of Advaitacharya in Shantipur. The Ganges used to run next to his home. The rivers do shift, and the Ganges does too. When we were in Vrindavan in the 1970s, the Jamuna was just not too far behind the Krishna Balaram temple. Now it's a long way. And similarly, the Ganga used to run right behind the house of Advaitacharya and Shantipur. When they arrived there, and Advaitacharya came on a boat with some garments for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu noticed, Advaitacharya said, "What are you doing here in Vrindavan?" And he replied, "Wherever you are is Vrindavan," still keeping the ruse going. And Mahaprabhu finally realized that he had been cheated and brought to that place. Of course, it was all in his desire to enjoy pastimes there with Advaitacharya. He went to his house and he had taken sannyas, but he met his dear mother there and said that, "I'm your property. You please tell me what to do. I took sannyas out of madness." And she told him that you could stay in Jagannath Puri, because although Mahaprabhu had said, "I can come back here, I'll do that." And she said, "No, you don't want to ruin your reputation and come home." But Jagannath Puri and Navadvip are like two rooms in the same house, she said. People are always coming, going from Navadvip to Jagannath Puri. And I'll be able to get news of you regularly there. And of course, all the devotees in Navadvip were not too pleased about Mahaprabhu taking sannyas in the first place. Therefore, you don't see deities of Mahaprabhu worshipped by Gaudiya Vaishnavas in sannyas garb, as they want him as the great hero of Navadvip with his beautiful hair, wearing jewelry and so forth. But Mahaprabhu had his own purpose, as we were mentioning, of going to Jagannath Puri. And he orchestrated that, and of course, he converted as soon as he got there. The moment he got there, in fact, he arranged to meet Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was well known all over the world, greatest scholar. Practically, he was popular everywhere as a great teacher. He had memorized Shastras verbatim, and he had thousands and thousands of students. And as a revered teacher, and here's the young sannyasi at 24 years old that went to Jagannath Puri and then arranged to meet Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and summarily, within 10 days or so, then changed his heart from a Mayavadi into a pure devotee of the Lord. First shot heard around the world. Besides him taking sannyas, now he was going about and the likes of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And of course, we know as he stayed in Puri, he had many pastimes there, but he went to South India for some years and came back. And Advaitacharya had sent a note to Mahaprabhu that said, "There's enough rice in the marketplace. Everyone's full. You don't need to distribute anymore." And Mahaprabhu read it and smiled, laughed slightly. The devotees around him had wondered what that note meant. Swarup Damodar knew the meaning, but he feigned ignorance. And others were bewildered. What it really meant was, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exclaimed, that Advaitacharya is Mahavishnu. He has called me to come here, because we know it was the loud cries of Advaitacharya that called him to come. And now he is telling me it's time to leave. And as Kaviraj Goswami describes, there in Jagannath Puri, as soon as Mahaprabhu had received that note, that you've completed your Yuga Dharma mission. You've spread it so much that it'll go all over the world, was the implication. And after that, his pastimes changed, and they became, as Kaviraj Goswami says, mad or insane performances. And Mahaprabhu stayed in one place there in the Gambhira, which means means deep, to a small room where he would experience the emotions of Srimati Radharani, which is what he came to do. Krishna notes in his pastimes that Srimati Radharani, his compassionate female counterpart, enjoys the rasa, because Krishna is the object of her love, trillions of times more than Krishna enjoys. So therefore he comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Jagannath Puri is also known as Vipralamba Kshetra. Vipralamba is the emotion of separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The topmost emotion as presented by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and there in Purushottam Kshetra, he cultivates that in the association of his most intimate associate Swarup Damodar and Ramananda Roy. So the Srimad Bhagavatam describes what is Jagannath Puri, or the Srimad Bhagavatam presents the circumstances from which we can understand the meaning of Ratha Yatra. It's quite amazing that Prabhupada, when he was a child, had immediately gravitated towards the Ratha Yatra. His family was not prepared to buy a Ratha Yatra cart. Would have been like buying a, what is that, Tesla? Expensive. And somebody in the neighborhood had offered a cart. Prabhupada told one of my godbrothers in New York, he said, when I was a child, when I was going to sleep at night, I was so attached to that Ratha Yatra cart. It was a small Ratha Yatra cart. He said, they'd put it by my bed and I would go to sleep and I'd keep my hand on it. And he organized the Ratha Yatra there in his hometown, did Srila Prabhupada. And he said this was not a pretend festival, it was real. Because his devotion for Lord Jagannātha was real. And of course, later in life he met his eternal spiritual master there at Ottadunga Junction Road, who gave him the instruction to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. Before he had offered obeisances, and before he could sit up, his Guru Maharaj had given him the instruction. And he took it into his heart. And of course, when he came to America, the first Ratha Yatra was in San Francisco. And that Ratha Yatra took place on the back of a truck. You know what a flatbed truck is? Yeah, you know what a flatbed rickshaw is too, right? They have those. It's just like that, only on a truck. And Prabhupada trusted his devotees. I was thinking today that many of you are the age during which Prabhupada empowered young people to take over whole continents and be in charge of hundreds, if not thousands, of people. So get ready. And that Ratha Yatra was enacted. Prabhupada was ill during that first one, but the devotees in an old truck were able to take Lord Jagannātha on his tour to the beach. And there's pictures from that time, and then there were subsequent Ratha Yatras in San Francisco, then it spread to other cities. For instance, in New York, we were there for the first Ratha Yatra in 1976. Prabhupada came, and Jagannātha was there. He lived in the temple at 340 West 55th between 8th and 9th. It was in Manhattan. 12 or 14 story, I can't remember, but it was a big building. There's pictures of it. Should have kept it. Circumstantial, we couldn't. It's only worth about $250 million now, that building. in any case, we have Rath Yatra there down Fifth Avenue. It's still going on. We just had it a couple weeks ago. So Prabhupada would speak at these Rath Yatra festivals, and he would say, this is a feeling festival. He's repeated that as a very feeling festival, the Rath Yatra. At the same time, it was an opportunity for people to get to know the Hare Krishna movement through the medium of the Rath Yatra festival, which is, festivals are so joyful. People walk into them and they feel drawn to Krishna consciousness, that they've never seen spiritual life presented like that, with chanting, dancing, and feasting. But there's another side to it. For those who know the pastime, it comes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And what Prabhupada means by a feeling festival is traces to the highest position in the spiritual world, which is also paralleled here on this earthly planet. That's also described in the Brahma Samhita. The earthly Vrindavan, known as Bhoma Vrindavan, is also is like an exact replica of the spiritual world, except, interestingly, the pastimes of Krishna that take place here on earth are sweeter than in the spiritual world. Because Krishna is more human here, he actually takes birth in this world. He doesn't take birth in Goloka, in the spiritual world. That pastime takes place here. And he also kills demons. There's a danger from Kamsa. Prabhupada said in the Goloka, there are rumors of demons, but the kind of carnage that Krishna inflicted on the demons is there in Bhoma, earthly Vrindavan. And the residents of Vrindavan are Raja Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavana Ramya Kachirupasana Rajavidu Vargena Vokalpita. First of all, from the Chaitanya Manjusha, it's described, this is a summary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's most relished and relishable objectives. One is that Vrindavan and Krishna are the same. There's no difference in Krishna and his Dham. And then it says that Ramya Kachirupasana of Rajavadu. The Rajavadus, the damsels of Vrindavan, the cowherd maidens in Vrindavan, are the highest manifestation of Krishna Bhakti. And of course headed by the fountainhead of all of Krishna's devotees, Shaktis, is Srimati Radharani. And all of them there in Vrindavan are inextricably and completely attached to Krishna in this kind of love that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to show the world, which is Ragatmika Bhakti, the highest level of devotional love that one can have for Krishna, most intimate, where they don't even think of Krishna as God. If someone tells even Nanda Maharaj, your son is God, you say, yeah, whatever. And when Yashoda sees within Krishna's mouth all the universes, she's like, just don't eat dirt anymore. And the opulence of the Lord is suppressed there, so that the unabated love in the hearts of the devotees, who are mentioned by Shukadeva Goswami as being the rarest of souls anywhere in the universe. Itam satam brahma sukhana bhutya dasam gatanam paradaivatena mayashitanam naradarakena sakambrajaru krita punya punjaha. Shukadeva Goswami comments in the chapter about Aghasura. He's telling Parikshit Maharaj, these are not ordinary personalities. He's referring to the cowherd boys in that case, but he's saying these are the souls who are most special anywhere. There are others who relate to Krishna as I described before, from the Brahma Samhita on reverence. There's some that think of the Lord as the impersonal Brahman. That's their relationship with him. And then there's some Mayashritanam, Naradarakena, who are in Maya, and they just think, he's an ordinary kid. What are you talking to him for? But then, Sakamvra Jarukrita Punya Punjaha, those who have attained the highest perfection have, as Prabhupada says, heaps and heaps of pious activities. They are the ones playing with Krishna in Vrindavan. So all of the residents of Vrindavan are in this eternal pastime with Krishna. And then Krishna advances his pastime by arranging that Akura will come from Mathura. Kamsa has very craftily offered Akura a brand new chariot to take to Vrindavan, because he thinks, well, he'll like that. Got a new car, you take that. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains how, of course, that would be arranged because Krishna would never sit in a chariot that had been used by Kamsa. And Akura, interestingly, on his way to meet Krishna and bring him back for this dastardly purpose, which he knew the plan. Kamsa was open with him about that, and he said, we're going to bring him back here. We have several opportunities to kill him. So that was his main objective. He had elephant Kuvalayapita, he had the wrestlers Chanura Mushtika, and Akura knew all this, and on his way to see Krishna in Vrindavan and bring him back, which was his duty under the king, he was only thinking that I'm so fortunate I get to see Krishna, and he also thought Krishna will understand why I'm coming here, because I'm his pure devotee. And when he came to Vrindavan, he saw the sweetness and beauty of Vrindavan, and he met Krishna, who, as Akura imagined he would, Krishna placed his lotus palm upon his head and blessed him. And then the piteous scene unfolds as Akura takes Krishna away from Vrindavan. The gopis, of course, are mentioned as being troubled by the way Brahma has created the universe. Previously, they've said in their prayers that what kind of a dunce is Brahma, the creator, that he's made our eyelids blink. He's given our eyes these eyelids that they blink, so we miss Krishna for that amount of time. How fast is a blink? But they can't. That's how deep their devotion is to Krishna. That's real ragatmika bhakti. They're so attached. They can't bear separation from him for a blink of an eye. And their love affair with Krishna is secret. It's one of the ways in which it's enhanced in the Parakya Ras in Vrindavan, is because supposedly nobody knows about it. They meet him in secret. Krishna apparently goes home at night, and his mother smothers him with love and feeds him, bathes him, puts him in nice pajamas, and he sneaks out the window. That's there in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita at the time. He has a time to meet all of his various devotees, and he's ever active there in Vrindavan. In fact, we find later in the description of Jagannātha, Baladeva, and Subhadra, the pastime related to us through Aitiyam, coming down through Oriyan culture, transcendental culture, and Gaur Govinda Maharaj talking about the ways in which, when later estranged from Vrindavan and far away, Krishna, Balaram, Subhadra, then reconnect to the residents of Vrindavan and hear of their separation from them, and their forms with wide eyes and limbs that are not visible because they're contracted within their bodies. These are forms of ecstasy. They're experiencing when they hear about the separation of the devotees in Vraj. And so we find that as the pastime unfolds and Krishna comes to Mathura, and then it goes to Dwarka, fast forwarding past many, many chapters, of course. And from Dwarka, there's an arrangement that he'll come to Kurukshetra. Everybody goes to Kurukshetra. It's a famous place since Parashuram had laid waste to generations of corrupted Kshatriyas, and he had created lakes there, and people would go there for all kinds of ceremonial purposes. So Krishna had decided to go there for the eclipse, an upcoming eclipse. There's a time when people go to perform religious ceremonies, and there he went with his millions of soldiers in gold filigree and elephants and horses marching to go to that place. And there were bards that went out to various towns, cities, villages, everywhere. That was the internet kind of system. They'd send actual people out with drums. They would beat the drums and they would announce very loudly the upcoming events. So the word spread throughout the land and everyone was headed for Kurukshetra. And then when the devotees in Vrindavan heard of Krishna's migration there for a holy festival, after over 100 years of separation from him there in Vrindavan, where, as described in the Shastra, they didn't even sleep because you can't sleep when your face is wet, and their eyes were always pouring tears in separation from Krishna. They all took as an opportunity, we're going to go see Krishna in Kurukshetra. So you can read this in the 82nd chapter of the Bhagavatam, 10th canto. Krishna's there at his encampments. He's meeting with all important rulers and sages who have come there, and then the residents of Vrindavan come. Who are they compared to all these other opulent personalities? They pull up in covered wagons. And what have they brought as gifts and also to sustain themselves? But they bring milk products from the Vraj, where their only livelihood is taking care of the cows. Vrindavan, apparently just a small village, but actually described in the teachings of Lord Chaitanya that the topmost planet Goloka, and especially Vraj, if you take all of the material world and all of the Vaikuntha planets put together, they don't equal the size of Vraja. And they're always expanding as well, because although it's unlimited in length and breadth, although there's no real measurement in the spiritual world, everything's measured by the level of emotion. If you have deep love for someone, you can live in a small place and there's no problem. But if you don't, even if you live in the biggest house on the block, you'll resent the fact that your counterpart is in the other room. In any case, when they came there, they met Krishna, and the pinnacle, which is of devotion, and this mood of separation comes to its topmost level in Kurukshetra. Because after long separation, the gopis come, and of course, Nanda, Yashoda are there. There's an esoteric reason that the cowherd boys aren't there that's described in Shastra, which I won't go into right now, but the gopis then finally come to the point of meeting with Krishna there, and Srimati Radharani meets with Krishna. And at that time, although Krishna's there, she's seeing him directly in front of him. And Krishna's indicating that, here I am. She says, not like this. We don't want you here in Dwarka with all these soldiers and your opulent clothes. Where's the peacock feather? We want to see the flute. In Vrindavan, Krishna dresses himself with forest elements, leaves, branches. They take from Govardhan Hill, there's clays and different kinds of dyes. They'll decorate themselves with these. We want to see you in Vrindavan. Without the backdrop of the Jamuna and Govardhan Hill and Vamshivat and all these places where they had their loving pastimes, which is, as we said, Aradro Bhagavan Vrajesha Tanayasta Dhama Vrindavana. There's no difference between Krishna and his Dham. And Krishna means Krishna in Vrindavan. In fact, Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. And they felt this so deeply when they're at Kurukshetra, that there's this poignant moment at which they're seeing Krishna there, but they're saying, no, not like this. In fact, there's a song that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, remembering this exact time when Radharani and the gopis meet Krishna in Kurukshetra and are pining for him, but they say, no, we can't love you here the way we love you in Vrindavan. It doesn't resonate here. We need you to come back. Please come back with us to that place. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as we all know very well, had at the Rath Yatra taken a song from the popular teachings of the time, and he was singing it in front of the Rath Yatra cart, much to the chagrin of many surrounding people. Who was like, what's he singing? This sannyasi? Like a Taylor Swift song or something popular that people would know. And it's like, wait a minute, I know those lyrics. What kind of Shastra is that? Mahaprabhu's mind, as he was playing the part of Srimati Radharani during the Rath Yatra, his mind was gone to Vrindavan, absorbed in this separation, although she's there with Krishna in Vrindavan. Is no, we want you in Vrindavan. And as Prabhupada explains, when he talks to people, he'll start by explaining the very basics of Krishna consciousness, and then he'll tell the audience about the feeling festival that the residents of Vrindavan, and who's ever heard of the residents of Vrindavan before Prabhupada came to America? Who's ever heard of God who's in love, who has a girlfriend even? And as one devotee put it when he was talking, I think maybe it was Rabindra Sarup Prabhu, somebody super intelligent and observant, was talking about how the hippies resonated towards Krishna. I mean, they were barefoot, Krishna's barefoot. They played flutes, Krishna plays a flute. He has a girlfriend. But as they pined for him more and more, the separation, although he's right in front of them, became so intense. Their only impetus and desire then was to bring him back to Vrindavan. And amazingly, in Jagannath Puri, every year this pastime is enacted where the Lord comes out of the temple after he's spent time with Lakshmi Devi. And now he's going to the other side, the unceremonious love, like, yeah, I'll be right back. Not. And he's heading out to see his lovers, see his lover, and all those who love him in Vrindavan, and he's leaving for that place. You can't get any more esoteric and more of a feeling festival than that, because that is the pinnacle of the spiritual world. Yet, somehow or other, Prabhupada revealed it to the world through the Rath Yatra ceremony. And we have these places of pilgrimage, especially these three, Jagannath Puri, we have Vrindavan, and we have Mayapur. If one learns to live in those dhams, to go to those dhams and experience for oneself, it's not an intellectual activity, but if we go there and we hear these pastimes, as Prabhupada said, it's a feeling festival. We'll feel it in our hearts, something that's inexplicable. It's beyond the intelligence. It's the pastimes of the spiritual world. And that's what's enacted in cities around the world, is this festival of the topmost importance in the spiritual world of the residents of Vrindavan, the best of all devotees, pulling Krishna back to Vrindavan. And so at Jagannath Puri, tomorrow, is it? Be televised. Generally, when you go to the Rath Yatra in Puri, then you find a vantage point where you can watch the deities come out of the temple. And Balaram takes the longest because he's intoxicated or something. And they have to pull him. There's all these pandas who come and they, with silk ropes, they pull him to the cart. I was on the edge of my seat watching as they go up a ramp, and they were almost to the top and then all the way back down. I'm like, what are you doing? It took hours. And then finally when they all get on their carts ready to go, and everyone's so joyful, and there's over 1 million people there in the crowd. And then the speeches start. All kinds of people come out, the Shankaracharyas and even politicians or whatever, and they give speech and speech and speech and speech, right? And that's when you go home and turn on the television, turn on the AC, and wait till the carts start to move. And as soon as they start moving, then you come running out. And that's tumultuous, what takes place there. The ropes are that big. And who knows where all the people come from, but they come from everywhere. And if you look out into the crowd, you can see what Achinta Beda Bed means. Because although it's one crowd, 1 million people, as far as the eye can see, there are obvious groups mixed in. And that is the pastime of Rath Yatra that Prabhupada brought. It's only just a brief summary of what it is, but we're to realize this and enter into it through our sadhana, through our association with the great acharyas who are in our line, who have given us the Srimad Bhagavatam and the real meaning behind the Bhagavatam. And we have these 3 dhams to go to and to learn to relish in Vrindavan and in Mayapur and in Jagannath Puri. Prabhupada brought us to those places. He said, you come here regularly and then go back out. He didn't tell us to stay. He said, every year you come here and you all meet together. And then one thing he said, you discuss unity and diversity. And then you go back and give this to the rest of the world by putting on Rath Yatra, by distributing books, by opening temples so people could come in and hear the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita and have association of devotees. And thus reveal to people in Kali Yuga, who are preoccupied in so many ways it boggles the mind, with the story, the love story of the spiritual world, which is all summarized in one simple mantra. Would you like to hear what that mantra is? Yes. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. So if we can become attached to that, and we can become attached to Rath Yatra and the meaning behind it, we'll be swept away to the spiritual world. Yat pada pankacha palasa vilasya bhakta. There's a vilas. There's a real taste in it. If you don't have the taste, you can see it in great souls. And then you can serve the great souls. And great souls are magnanimous. They'll bestow upon us, by their association, a little molecule of that sense of attachment to the spiritual world. And if you can get that, your life is complete. If you get anything else, any other bija in this world, like there's Prabhupada describes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, some people get faked out. They get bija, a lata, or they get a karma bij. Like, oh, big successful man. Or some desire to merge and become God, and become detached from the body, and become identified as Brahman. But all of these are useless. The only bija that is important is the bhakti lata bij. And we can get that from those who have been touched by the association of the great souls. And that's what our movement is. So we're really fortunate to be here in the home of Bali Mardan Prabhu, Ananda Vrindavan, Abhay, Brajaras Bhavana. And to experience this, what it's like to be in a home of somebody who feels this very deeply, who are actually attached to Jagannātha, who worship Jagannātha every day. That's their home. When you come here, you just think you're in Jagannath Puri. And when you see Bali Mardan Prabhu, you feel like going to Jagannath Puri. And so here it is, right wherever we are. I have no idea. It's somewhere in the hills of California. But here we are with Jagannath, and here we are telling the story of Lord Jagannath from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I pray that we may all develop this sense of intense attachment to these three dhams. We can all go repeatedly to Jagannath Puri and feel what it means, why it's called Vipralamba Kshetra. If we can feel that, if we can experience it for ourselves, then we have the most valuable asset in our life. And then, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates, because they had that, they were like madmen. They went everywhere. They didn't care who was a fit or unfit candidate, where was a good place or a bad place, where they got kicked out or didn't get kicked out. They just went everywhere, and it's such an intoxicating experience to be able to touch these dhams and the pastime, and then one will want to give it to the whole world, and that's what Prabhupada had. He didn't stop. He wanted to spread it everywhere. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra, if you so desire, please give us the molecule of Vipralamba within our hearts by participating in hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and being part of the Rath Yatra ceremony. And please empower us to spread it all over the world to please Srila Prabhupada and the great Acharyas. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat.